Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, dozens are killed as a packed Abuja bus station is targeted by a powerful bomb. Nigeria's president says the attack bears the hallmarks of Islamist militant group Boko Haram. Also, Guineans flock to the polling stations for a vote that they're hoping will mean stability for a nation plagued by coups. And Algeria's also got a big vote lined up. Ailing President Bouteflika is expecting to win, but his main rival isn't going down in Thursday's showdown without a fight. First up, hundreds of commuters were caught up in a rush-hour bombing of a Nigerian bus station Monday morning. At least 71 people have been killed and another 124 wounded. The blast happened in Abuja when the site was packed with travellers. So far, no one's claimed responsibility. However, suspicion has fallen on the Islamist militant group Boko Haram.
Rescue workers rushed survivors to the hospital. Dozens are dead after a blast at this bus station during morning rush hour in Abuja. The bomb left a hole more than a meter wide, and authorities believe it triggered secondary explosions when nearby vehicle fuel tanks were ignited.
The minimal information that we can gather so far was that the explosion emanated from a vehicle and it affected quite a number of people.
No group has claimed responsibility, but suspicion has fallen on Boko Haram, the terrorist network that wants to carve an Islamist state out of the country. Since the beginning of the year, more than 1,500 people have lost their lives in violence linked to the group. President Goodluck Jonathan said Nigeria will overcome Boko Haram. He issued a state of emergency last May for 3 states in the northeast, where the group has mostly concentrated their attacks hundreds of kilometers from the capital in central Nigeria. Boko Haram's leader has said the group plans to widen its insurgency. It last struck Abuja in 2012 when suicide car bombers targeted newspaper offices, an attack that left 7 people dead.
South African track star Oscar Pistorius faced a tough day in the dock during his murder trial today, as prosecutors accused him of shedding crocodile tears and staging emotional breakdowns in a bid to avoid answering tough questions. The Olympian denies murdering his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp, last year and insists that he shot her by accident, thinking she was an intruder. Pistorius has broken down several times during the 22-day trial. A Libyan judge has decided that the son of former dictator Muammar Gaddafi can be tried via video link. Saif al-Islam has been held by militia in the town of Zintan since the end of the 2011 revolution. He and 39 other former regime officials face war crimes charges, but his captors have refused to hand him over to Tripoli for the proceedings there. Well, the judge today ordered a satellite link with Saif al-Islam before adjourning proceedings until April 27th. At least 2 people were killed and several others hurt in Bangui on Sunday after the African Union's MISCA force repelled an attack on the home of the former Central African Army chief. Dangerous instability continues to plague the country after last year's short-lived takeover by Seleka rebels. Consequent fighting seen around 300,000 refugees, many of them Muslims, flee to neighbouring countries, whilst over 500,000 internally displaced people, or IDP, are also in desperate need of humanitarian aid. Well, earlier I spoke to the UN's envoy to the Central African Republic, Abu Musa. He told me that even as they flee, many Central African refugees are being targeted by Christian anti-Balaka militia.
Many of the people we met, particularly in Cameroon, spent weeks before they could get to the border. Some, of course, lost their families on the way, and some managed to arrive alive, but in bad health, bad conditions. We saw children at the border of Cameroon, in the hospitals, malnourished children, very severe malnourished children, because of the long journey they've gone through. Certainly, they walked, and they have to make sure that they don't cross anti-Balaka on the way. I mean, sometimes even they were caught up while they're in trucks. The trucks have been attacked. Some of them were raped on the way before they got to the cross line where they can be in safe conditions. So they are raped. We have cases like that in Cameroon. We have cases like that also in the Congo.
Now, to what extent does the crisis in Central African Republic threaten regional stability?
Stability, it's got to do with displacement of populations, refugees. It's got to do with health. It's got to do with a number of things. So this is what we are seeing in countries that we visited. There are large numbers. We are talking of 1.2 million IDPs. That's a threat to regional peace and security. Not to talk about security itself, where you see people moving across the border with arms, illicit arms. Some are even threatening those Muslims who have crossed into the neighboring countries. So and the situation in Bangui has not improved yet. We are still seeing deaths, we're still seeing killings. So this has to stop. And I think also the nationals must also be engaged. They should just join the chorus in searching for solutions, for supporting what the international community is doing for them.
Abu Musa there, speaking to me a little earlier on from Kinshasa. Well, in Guinea-Bissau, this Sunday, there was a high turnout for the presidential and parliamentary elections. The results are expected before the end of the week. Now, there's a lot riding on the polls as the nation suffered some turbulent times in the wake of the coup back in 2012.
Never before had the turnout been so high in an election in Guinea-Bissau. 70% of voters headed to the polling stations to say they were fed up with violence and coups.
It's important to vote so we can put an end to the problems the country is facing.
It's often after the results are announced that you see major trouble.
Since its independence from Portugal in 1974, not one of the country's leaders has finished his time in office. The last coup was staged in April 2012. Yet the current interim president remains optimistic.
If we have dialogue and mutual respect, then I know that all Ghanaians will put in the effort so that this country can always be stable.
Guinea-Bissau's 1.7 million inhabitants are also calling for economic stability. 80% of them live with less than $1 a day. The country relies heavily on the export of cashews and foreign aid. And in recent years, it has been at the heart of the illegal cocaine business. The head of the army, Antonio Njai, is under federal indictment in the United States for his alleged role in cocaine trafficking. Everyone is now waiting to see how the army will react after the results are announced this week. Many hope the fact the international community this time was greatly involved in the electoral process could discourage yet another military intervention.
Campaigning has now officially wrapped up ahead of Algeria's presidential election due this Thursday. Incumbent Abdelaziz Bouteflika is expected to face a pretty easy win for a fourth term in office, despite his ailing health. Accusations of vote rigging may have already put off several would-be candidates, but of the 5 running against Bouteflika, his only real rival is a former ally and Prime Minister Ali Benflis. France 24's team on the ground went to meet him.
Standing again after 10 years in the political wilderness. Former Algerian Prime Minister Ali Benflis is now the main opposition candidate. The end of his campaign has been controversial. He was denounced by the president after warning officials against electoral fraud.
You've seen the latest masquerade with your own eyes. I was invited onto a program on public television, which I'd been barred from for 10 years, and I wasn't allowed to speak out. Only those who sing the praises of the Sultan are allowed to.
Ali Benflis was once head of Algeria's ruling FLN, but he's since turned his back on the party and aging President Bouteflika.
The people here want a peaceful change via the ballot box, and I'm the one who can bring that change. I've come to understand that. This is my aim. I believe in it, and I have no other aims.
Even though he's attracted crowds to his rallies, analysts don't predict Benflis will prove much of a worry to the president. A decade ago, when he last stood, he only managed to poll 6% of the vote. This time, Benflis plans on sending 60,000 election observers to the polls to try and ensure it's a fair fight.
Well, before we go, a quick look at football. Fans of Ivorian and Manchester City midfielder Yaya Toure are sweating it out amidst worries that he may not be able to participate in the Brazil World Cup. He collapsed in pain during a City match with Liverpool on Sunday, and there are fears that his limping exit off the field could mean he'll miss the rest of the season as well. Well, that wraps up African News from me for this hour. I'll be back with more next hour. Stay with us, though. More news and headlines coming up.